right, good evening, everybody. Welcome into the TMBR TV Michigan Basketball Postgame Live. I'm Dennis Fithian, joined by Brandon Justice, the recruiting editor of TMBR. There you see him. The opening night down at the Chrysler Center, and Brandon, the banner went up, and Michigan came out, and they looked like they weren't going to take any prisoners off the bat, but it ended up tightening up in the second half. What are some of your first thoughts after this game is now gone final 88-76?
Yeah, I mean, hey, first thing is Michigan's offense definitely delivered on the hype it was getting going into the season, with Jones facilitating. And I think that we saw Hunter Dickinson displaying a lot of the things that he worked on over the offseason that we were told he was working on over the offseason, especially going to his right. But I think a big underrated factor with the Dickinson game tonight was, yes, he showed he could do those things, but he's still lethal with the left, and that is still there for him. So it's good to see that he didn't lose anything there, at least with the small sample size that we had. So obviously the second half was much different, and we talked about this as a group in our group message. You saw the reactions on Twitter. Buffalo's a good team. I mean, when Michigan was up as much as it was in the first half, it was kind of shocking to see them running away with it so quickly. Not to discredit Michigan and what they can become this year, but more so to credit Buffalo, who's a traditionally good MAC team, is a favorite to win that conference this year. So it was no shock to see them come back in that second half. To get as close as they did was a little bit of a shock, but no shock to see some fight out of them.
Yeah, Michigan's up 15 at the half, and they were up by 20 in the first half. And in baseball, sometimes they talk about pitchers coming in stressful situations, stressful pitches, and this game right here in the first half, this was going to be just a parade, a banner night, a walkthrough. Even though Buffalo was a good team, a route, everybody's going to get in, a lot of high fives and everything else. But at the end of the half, that's when Buffalo chipped away a little bit and was able. And then they came out really strong, and they were fired up. And they got it down to 5 points, and then Michigan had to lead on Hunter Dickinson, and he did deliver. And in the end, when you have that kind of pushback, and maybe Juwan Howard, maybe we'll hear from him here coming up shortly. My guess is that he was going to say we always knew that they were going to make a run. They're a good team, and they really are. I mean, they've got playmakers, and you could see physically. I mean, they got a senior-laden team. They're going to be a tough out for anybody that ends up having to play them in the MAC or anywhere else in the NCAA tournament. You might not want to run into the Buffalo Bills there, or Buffalo Bulls. The kind of they look like the Chicago Bulls, at times there in the second half. But what did you think of the newcomers, Devontae Jones, and then the six freshmen?
Hey, I mean, I think Diabate, or I think I started saying that right originally. Diabate I think he kind of outperformed what we thought he was going to be in game one, at least. You could just tell the impact he has when he's on the floor, and what he brings to Michigan, especially defensively. And so I'm really excited about that because he's just a fun player to watch on the floor. The big one was obviously Jones and that wingspan and how much that adds to his defensive prowess. And Michigan's perimeter defense should be really good with its length. But I also believe that they have this really good balance where guys like Jones can guard the perimeter, guys like Eli Brooks can guard the perimeter, and then down low, Dickinson, not a defensive star, but he's good enough to still play good defense. Diabate, Terence Williams is really physical down low when he needs to be down there. Brandon Johns, obviously the same thing there. So it was good. It was good to see some balance from that team, from its freshmen, especially Caleb Houston. There's no way you can go a whole conversation about Michigan's freshmen and not bring up Caleb Houston. So he's a guy that was expected to be as good as he could inevitably be here. He's a guy who could be a one and done, or at least is expected to be a one and done potentially. So it was refreshing to see one of those seasons where Michigan really hasn't had this sort of like freshman hype, quote unquote, in quite some time, And so besides, I mean, obviously Dickinson last year, but Juwan Howard has really brought that, like, okay, these recruiting classes are going to come impact it right away. Like, they're going to come in and they're going to immediately play a role in this team. If they're not in the starting five, they're still going to play a large enough role to have a sizable impact on this team's success. And, guys like Houston can attribute to that, and he might be as good or better than Dickinson was in his freshman year. So we'll see. But again, another really refreshing team and just in general from Juwan Howard, who's doing just a heck of a job as a head coach of this team.
Yeah, Caleb Houston comes in with the credentials, 5-star, the 8th ranked player in the country, according to Rivals, top 150. So he comes in with all of that. You know, he let the game come to him. He hit that first 3, which was nice. You saw in the second half, he airmailed one, but when he came back and shot his next one, he shot it with authority and knocked it down. So that was good. He ends up in double figures. I thought this game, the biggest play, you know, the Buffalo got it down to 7. Then they got it down to 6 with 8.5 to go. Then they got it down to 5 with 7 minutes to go. And Michigan did a few things that you do that you don't want to do when you're a favorite at home and you're playing, a pesky team like Buffalo. You don't want to miss the front end of 1-and-1s. And Hunter Dickinson missed one. Devontae Jones missed one. Devontae Jones has been an 80% free throw shooter at his time at Coastal Carolina. So you didn't expect that. So those are some of the markings you're thinking, here you go. But Terence Williams came down and he hit a 3. And I thought that was the biggest shot of the game. After that, Dickinson in that sequence was able to get a block with Williams playing defense there. But I thought that was the biggest play of the game.
Absolutely. 100% agree. When you brought up, hitting big shots, I immediately envisioned that particular shot. And so I'm happy you brought that up because Williams is a guy who I loved out of high school. Look, I'm not the biggest basketball pundit by any means, so I don't consider myself this grand basketball analyst. But watching Terence Williams was a guy who, again, Hunter Dickinson was the guy last year, and he was the guy getting all of the hype and all of that. And I was really excited about Terence Williams and what he could do. And last year was very much so a role player with spare minutes. But how about 15 points to start off 2021? I mean, hey, the bank was open on his first 3. Which was cool.
4-point play, yeah.
Yeah, 4-point play, very rare. And it's the headband. I like how they call. I think there's a group of Michigan fans on Twitter that call him like headband Trey or something along those lines. And I think it's a pretty funny little gimmick they got going on Twitter. But it's legit. The kid looked like a different man out there this year. A lot more confident, especially in his shot beyond the arc, like we saw.
Yeah, he wears kind of the long sleeve shirt, but he looks like he's packed on. It wouldn't surprise me if he said, he put on 5-10 pounds of muscle. I mean, he looks pretty big, and he's 6'6". And the one thing, you hit the 4-point play, he hit the big 3 that we talked about there. You can't do much better than 5 of 7 boards and a feed there. So fantastic. And then the other one he had right there from the right elbow. Robbie Hummel called it a Dirk Nowitzki move, just coming in there. And, so he wasn't, just getting them like kind of cheap points or garbage points down low, which aren't cheap, but they're garbage points. But, 3-pointers, mid-range game, he really did it all. I would say he's the unsung hero because you know what? Having Hunter Dickinson when you need a bucket and being able to go down to him, and he's just a monster. And it was what we saw very quickly last year, Brandon, that you've got a guy here that is a difference maker that the other team, can't account for, that you just mark it up sometimes when you get him the ball. And it really, this just it really helps your team to have somebody that can just get to a bucket like that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a game wrecker, man. He's a game wrecker completely. And he comes in and he's what beats other teams, right? He's going to be the guy that gets them over that hump where they win 3 or 4 point games and they're going to have to rely on this guy down the stretch because he is so reliable down low. And, Michigan and the teams of the past, this may not ring 100% true, but it's felt like in those big games or in the games that they fell, it was because they were very reliant upon shooting beyond the arc and the jumpers. Have they had good to decent big men? Yes. I mean, but Mitch McGarry was, quite a bit ago, right? So you think about Hunter Dickinson as this dominant force down low. That might not play super well in the NBA. Like there might not be many teams in the NBA built around centers, if any. But in college basketball, if you have a dominant center who can shoot beyond the elbow, around the elbow, and he can sometimes go beyond the arc, he's kind of turning into an anomaly in how reliant he is under the basket, but not just off the board. He can shoot the jumper. He can fade away. I mean, he took 2 or 3 defenders on Buffalo today and hooked it over him. Right. And that's that Nowitzki play we're talking about. So he's got that juice, that Nowitzki juice that you don't see out of the centers today. And he's got game-taking over ability like we saw last year. The question was, is that going to turn up this year? Is it going to be much of the same? Is there a sophomore slump? I mean, if game one's any indication, it's taking the next step. You'd have to think with Juwan Howard working with him, the more likely scenario was the next step. And that's what we've seen so far. We'll see if it carries on. Yeah,
well, the one thing, like, sure, you'd like to see him develop a right hand, extend his range, do all these different things. But when you are a player that you just throw it down on the left block and nobody in college basketball really has an answer for you, you're still going to go to that, your bread and butter, and keep doing it until they can stop you. And they have to double team you. And when they do that, he's a pretty good passer. So being able to go to that and have that in your back pocket is something good. He did post up on the right side, and then the defender was overplaying him so much to the left. He just went to the right really quick and jammed it. We saw that a few times last year, but I like what you were talking about. A couple times in that pick and roll, instead of going in and forcing the action a little bit, he just stops and just tosses that little, it's like a front hook, that he's just throwing up there pretty feathery, and he's able to stop on a dime, and he dropped a couple of those in. That's a deadly weapon. And you get that going a little bit and your power game, then you really got something. That's why Michigan should be, and they are, the favorite in the Big Ten, Brandon. Let's talk about some things here. There was a lot of good, especially in the first half, right down the line. Hey, like this, like that, like everybody, what they're doing here. There are some things that people are going to talk about that they'll want to work on. I'm sure the free throw shooting, missing the front end of the one-on-ones, and then both Caleb Houston and Devontae Jones both got in some foul trouble in the first half. They both had 2, so they had to go to the bench. Other than that, I think you could expect teams to – I would have liked the laugher myself, but in the end, now that it's tightened up, and I think it's a good thing. And anything else that you would point to that you think that that Juwan Howard's going to emphasize that they might want to get better at?
I think that I think they just hope that the whistles don't work as well for the next officiating crew. I mean, I think everyone was in foul trouble tonight. Seemed like that whistle was blowing every 30 seconds, which is kind of par for the course in sports these days, apparently. But, it was just kind of frustrating. I got to run here, but I think that the officiating is definitely played a role in a lot of the foul trouble that went on tonight. I mean, there was some – and that's not just for Michigan. I mean, it was both sides. There was just way too many. You got – at some point, you just have to let the sport play itself out, right? I mean – if it's not malicious or if there's some stuff down low, it's like it's a physical game. You just got to let these things play out. They're whistling on blocks and there's just all kinds of stuff. But you can hardly rebound with that crew that was out there again, either side. So,
well, Brandon, we'll send the tape in and we'll see if we can get a response. From Big Ten. We'll have Juwan.
Don't comment on it, though. For the love of God, don't comment on it. That would be the worst thing you can do.
All right, you're gonna run. Not that you're going out there a date or going through a drive-through or something. You've got a recruit on the other end of the line that you got to get to, and we'll talk with you tomorrow. We got Who Got Game, so we look forward to that, and we'll be live around 2:00. So yep. I'm fired up for that. So get to work, and thanks for joining us here on the post game live.
Absolutely. I'll see you later, Dennis.
All right, there he is, Brandon Justice, joining us here, TMBR. He is the recruiting editor, and it's true so far. What I've seen from Justice, the recruiting editor, does not sleep. I'm telling him, you're ready to come on. He's like, yeah, hold on a second. I'm talking to somebody out. Okay, but so we're happy to have him on, even here for a couple minutes. All right, let's take a look at the box score, and it gives me a chance to go over and take a breath here, and then think about this game tonight, which Michigan ends up winning 88-76. If you're watching this for the first time and you're a Michigan basketball fan, you're in luck, because after every game, about 10 minutes after the game, I'll fire up the YouTube and I'll talk about Michigan hoops. And that's the plan throughout the season. So I'm excited to do that tonight with the banner going up. No surprises with the starting lineup. It was Eli Brooks and Devontae Jones in the backcourt. Each of those guys, 23 years old. Hunter Dickinson up front with Brandon Johns Jr., who got into the starting lineup last year, late in the year when Isaiah Livers was hurt. And then the newcomer, the 5-star, Caleb Houston, via Canada, coming in there. And that was the starting 5. I think some surprise that we didn't have Zeb Jackson, the sophomore. He was not available in this game. But you did see when you look at the freshmen here, you had a couple. Frankie Collins did come in. We didn't see him at Wayne State. They said, I think they called it a groin injury. I don't think they did call it a groin injury. And so, it was good to see him out there, and he looked pretty good in the minutes that he had, talking about Frankie Collins. A little bit surprised with the backcourt rotation right off the bat. The first person to come in was Nunez, Adrian Nunez, the senior out of Brooklyn. He came in, and up front, not a surprise, seeing Moussa Diabate and Terence Williams coming in on the front line in the rotation. But, Brandon mentioned it, and I'll mention it too. In the first half, when it looked like this was going to be a laugher and Michigan was going to run away with it, it was a little bit of the same thing that I thought just watching the exhibition out at Wayne State. Moussa Diabate is, he's just excitement. He's excitement packed into a 6'11" frame. Excitement that, he can just do it all. He made a good pass. He made a good block. You can see the athleticism with him running the floor. He had a dunk. He had another dunk. He had another block. I mean, this is something, and it's not like it's a surprise, like a major surprise here. It's not like Moussa Diabate. You're like, man, they really missed on him in the recruiting circles or anything else. He was a 5-star. He was the 25th ranked overall players, and the Rivals 25. If it wasn't for Caleb Houston, we'd be talking about, hey, this guy's a super, and one of the guys that you're bringing in that you're expecting a heck of a lot from. And he has delivered like immediately. And he wasn't a gigantic factor in the second half, but he sure was in the first. And he flashed enough where you can look at him and you can say, man, this guy's going to be trouble. He's going to be trouble for any other team. He can, because of his size and just his versatility and everything that he can do. If he plays anything like he did in the first half for the rest of the season, then it's great news for the Maize and Blue. And Caleb Houston, I've been impressed. He's let the game come to him. This wasn't a game where you're just falling out of your seat like, oh my God, this guy's going to be the greatest ever. But you know what? He knocked down his first three. He hit another one after he airballed one. That's a good sign. Where you come back, you miss everything over there. You get that next shot. That's going to be one where you got to show the confidence in yourself and your J. And he did that. And he's not somebody that's just out there wandering around the 3-point line looking for his jumper. He drove in a little bit as well. Made some nice passes as well. So like what I saw there. From Caleb Houston, really across the board here for Michigan tonight. It was one of these games where Michigan came out strong. And the thing about Buffalo is that in the preseason coaches poll, there's 12 teams in the MAC. 11 of the 12 coaches picked Buffalo to win it. They had the defensive player of the year last year. They were one of the top 5 scoring teams in the country, one of the top offensive rebounding teams in the country, and you can see all of that. They put 2 players in the preseason All-MAC team, and they delivered all of that. So you had to think at some point they were going to take some kind of push. Yeah, you like to close out half stronger. When you work as hard as you do to build that kind of lead, you want to go into the break and feel like you're rewarded. Being up 15 is a pretty good margin. But then being able to keep your foot on the gas when you come out. Buffalo came out and said, look, man, we have to win. I know coaches say this a lot. We got to win the first 2 minutes, or we got to win the first 5 minutes. And, Buffalo did that. And then they got it within 7. And then they got it within 6 with 8.5 to go. They got it within 5 with 7 to play. And then Michigan's missing the free throws in the front end of the 1-and-1s. And I'm thinking, oh no, just like you were, that this one, for as well as they got off out of the blocks, man, here comes the Bulls. And you're watching last night a team like Akron, go down and to the Snake Pit in Columbus and hit a big shot where it looks like they're going to upset Ohio State, and then Ohio State makes one right at the buzzer. But college basketball, we know it. And there was a couple minutes over there. It was a little nail biting time where it got pretty tight. And in the end, I think that's going to serve Michigan well. I think Buffalo is going to be the best team Michigan plays this month. And they do play Seton Hall next week. And that game is in Ann Arbor. It's a 9:00 start, and Seton Hall's picked to finish in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten East. So, I mean, the Big East, not Big Ten East, the Big East. So, maybe they'll be better than Buffalo. And UNLV out in the Mountain West Conference, they're finished towards the bottom half of the Mountain West. Could be some issues when you think about the start time for that one. It's going to be after midnight here locally, I think 9:30. They're on West Coast time out there, 10:30, 11:30. Yeah, this is going to be after midnight here, so that could be an issue out in the desert when it comes to playing the Running Rebels. But I think that it's not safe to say, but probably that this is going to be the best team that Michigan plays until they face North Carolina on December the 2nd. Some other things that jump out here, I'll go through. We've talked about most of them here. If you're out there and wanted to put a comment in, if you're watching on YouTube, let's see, you got people watching everywhere, so you could put a comment wherever you're at, and it'll come up here on the screen, and I can talk about it. I'll pop the comment up on the screen as well, so you can do that. I'll just run down the players here and give you a thought on them. Brandon Johns had 5 points in this game, 1 of 5. Somebody there that, Brandon Johns, when he hangs out at the 3-point line, I don't know how many times last year when he got it, he would go to his pump fake or his jab step, and then he got called for a travel. And I thought that was going to happen in tonight's game, and it didn't. I don't know if he's tightened that up or if he got lucky, but it's close to a travel every time, and it wasn't tonight, but I'd like to see, and I know he doesn't want to get called for that, but that was something that jumped out. Talk about Caleb Houston, hit his first three-pointer, had some drives, had some nice passes, threw an air ball up, but came back and knocked one down. And it was a big, if Terence Williams' 3 wasn't the biggest shot of the game, it was right thereafter. There was a sequence when Caleb Houston came down and hit the 3. That was probably the second biggest shot of the game. So all in all for Houston, nice game as well. And his first official game in the maize and blue. Hunter Dickinson he's a monster. He did what he did last year. He got down and said, give me the ball and I'll take care of it. Nobody can stop me. And on the pick and roll, he was stopping mid post and throwing up a nice feathery little left-hand shot there. That's deadly. And you know what? For all the things like, well, you need Hunter to do this, you need Hunter to do that. You need Hunter Dickinson to do, if Hunter Dickinson does what he did last year, and just as a little bit better of a passer and a little bit better shape, he's going to be fantastic. I mean, he was second team All-American. So instead of, he's the straw here that's stirring the drink for U of M. So fantastic game for Hunter, who finishes it out 11 of 17 from the floor, 6 boards, and 27 points. He plays with an edge. Other teams trying to rile him up. There was the charge. They were down on the floor. There was some double techs and everything else. Hunter Dickinson, the number 1 star of the game. Number 2 star of the game for me was Terence Williams, coming off the bench, 5 of 7, delivering 2 of 3 from downtown. Biggest shot of the game. Ended up with 15 points and a feed. Terence Williams, number 5 out there, delivering and getting the number 2 star here. In the opener. Running down the rest of the players here, Devontae Jones in his first game coming over from Coastal Carolina. How about getting in there in the passing lanes and stealing the ball right off the bat? You could see that. I think Devontae Jones will lead the Big Ten in steals this year, and he'll be in the top 10 in the country when it comes down to picking the opponent's team's pocket. Devontae Jones had a pretty nice game here for Michigan, got into some foul trouble like Houston did in the first half. Eli Brooks was he was just a professor. I needed a big shot coming off the curl. He would knock one down. Ended up in double figures. He had 11 points. By the way, Devontae had 7 points. I do need a 3rd star here, and for that 3rd star, I am going to give it to also off the bench for what he did in the first half. Let me just give it to Moussa Diabate, man. Third star, live wire, just a continuation of what I saw from him at Wayne State. He was fabulous there. He was pretty good again tonight, and ends up 3 of 6, 5 boards, 3 assists, 7 points. We call that back in the day, ladies and gentlemen, a stat filler. Let's see where he was at halftime, talking about Moussa. He had all 7 of his points in the first half. He was 3 of 4, 2 boards, 3 assists, and 7 points in the first half. It was enough to help Michigan get that 15-point lead. That's why he ends up with the number 3 star. I think Juwan Howard will talk about free throws after this one. Michigan will want to knock those down, especially when you're talking about getting to the front end of one-on-ones. You got to hit those. That was basically at crunch time as well. Michigan ends up from the stripe. Let's see if I can get those numbers to you. I can. They are right here. All stats, free throws. Michigan ends up going 18 of 30 for 60%. You're gonna want to do better than that from the free throw line, but shooting 54% from the floor, good job, and 40% from downtown. You'll take that if you're Juwan Howard, just like you'll take the win over a really good Buffalo team. Coaches are never satisfied, and when you get up 15, you don't like to see the lead dwindle down to 5 with 7 minutes to go. But when it got down there, things got tight. Michigan was able to make some plays. They ratcheted it up defensively, and Terence Williams hit the big 3 for him, and Hunter Dickinson was a gigantic factor in the second half. All right, those are my thoughts on what I saw out there tonight against Buffalo, a successful game. Michigan will go at it again, let's see, Saturday when they bring in Prairie View for an 8 o'clock start down at the Chrysler Center. I don't know much about Prairie View right now, or I'd give you the Prairie View preview, but after that, then a week. Now, actually, this coming Tuesday, that's when Michigan will have a night game against Seton Hall. That's going to be one that be a little bit tighter, maybe than even tonight's game. Want to thank Brandon Justice for joining us, everybody for watching. If you're a Michigan Hoops fan, you're like, I want to watch some hoops. I want to watch somebody talk about this team after the game. I'll be here for you. Let's see. A text, freshman, Michigan basketball. We don't rebuild, we reload. That's coming in. A text coming in from Jim Scarcelli, who's going to join us on the post game after Penn State, coming up on Saturday. And Scar saying the freshmen look good. Devontae Jones looking strong as well. I'm with you, Scar. And again, thanks for watching. That'll do it. This will also be out in podcast form. If you're somebody like me in the morning, gets out and gets a little work in. Let's be honest. I'm out walking, but it's nice to have the availability of a podcast. That'll do it. Michigan wins this one 88-76. They're up 15 at the half. They win this one by 12. Oh yeah, the line was 12 and a half. So, hey, that's gambling for you. But one in the win column for the Wolverines, 88-76. I'll talk with you after the game on Saturday against Prairie View. And I'll talk with you tomorrow at 1 o'clock on this same TMBR channel. Good night.